Hello everyone, it's Dan here and welcome to the shading and the blending section of the realistic drawing guide. So we currently have a lot of very permanent dark shadows and facial features drawn out, and now we need to start moving onwards with the overall face of Will Smith here. So we have our outlines and we know where everything will need to go. It's just a matter of laying down some pencil and forming the skin, in which of course we will be shading and blending to try and get a nice smooth surface. The whole point of this is just to get some nice base turns, and then eventually when we get to that stage we will be working into these base layers and making those realistic skin textures. So here I'm going to take a 2B pencil. You could also go for a lighter pencil here because we are only creating really light marks, but I'll just see how it goes using a 2B. I'm always looking at the reference image and trying to see the best direction for me to create the pencil strokes. We want a smooth finish, so I'm making sure I create lines all in the same direction in regards to our reference image. For example, the forehead will have horizontal lines, whereas under the eyes and around the cheeks there are a lot more shape and structure to it, so we will be curving the direction of our lines to go along with how the cheeks and things are formed. I started with the forehead. It's probably the easiest section because it's more or less a flatter surface, so naturally the lines will be created horizontally. But notice that the forehead isn't just a flat 2D area. It's actually got a shape to it where it curves at either side of the face, like most people's heads tend to do. But we do need to do this with the pencil if we want it to look realistic. Obviously people don't tend to have flat 2D heads, so we're not going to be drawing any straight lines. So I'm going to speed it up here and talk a bit more in depth about blending and the shading. To the right side of the forehead we meet the shadow, and so when we get closer to that side I'm applying just a little more pressure so we can get those darker marks. Always feel free to change the pencils and see what you think is easier to create these different tones, but what we really want is a gradual transition from the different tones, and then it's this lighter to darker gradient. The main thing to focus on is the amount of pressure you apply and also the direction of your pencil strokes. You'll probably notice that there's a lot of skin texture and light areas that I seem to be ignoring right now, and that's because we will be working on this again later. But for now we are just laying down a base layer of pencil. Now that we have this forehead section done, I'm going to take a blending stump and gently start smoothing out and blending this area. So where we had shaded the right side of the forehead and where we have these different pencil turns, as I go over that and blend it, it almost fades it into each other and looks a lot more natural. That's the main shading and blending process that we will be doing for the base layer of pencil. So now I've blended the forehead and now I'm going to work into other areas of the face. It's pretty much a similar process. I'm always following the direction of the skin tones on the reference image, and that's really important. Remember that you can always make areas more darker if needs be. Just start by lightly shading and getting the right feel for certain elements of the face. I'm also using a piece of paper to rest on so that I don't smudge the drawing as I go along and work. So we have the lighter side of the face finished, but on the other side and below and around the neck we have this solid black shadow, and to do this we use the same process, except when we approach this shadow we'll be applying a lot more pressure onto the page. I also recommend using a soft pencil like a 5B. Also don't worry too much about making it look like a solid black. We can go over this a lot more and make it darker. Especially under the neck where the majority is just this solid black shadow, there is this large area to colour, so you might not be able to achieve those solid blacks straight away. What we can do is we can take even a softer pencil, and by creating really small strokes and still applying a lot of pressure, we can get something close to a solid black. This is why some people use charcoal in their drawings, because you can get those deep black tones, but we are focusing on pencil drawing in this guide. But it's still probably worth me saying that sometimes when we create these darker areas using a pencil like this, it can reflect light easier and it can sometimes take away some of the drawing's impact. But it's the best result we can get and it's perfectly fine in terms of realistic pencil drawing. So I've pretty much covered a lot of the face now with a base layer, and of course there isn't any texture placed over this yet. I also worked into the ears a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead now and colour in the hair. Now I'm going to cover the majority of this in a solid black, even though on the reference image we have small little areas where light is hitting it and creating these smaller, lighter marks. When I get to this point in the hair, I just leave tiny little gaps and fill the rest in. This should be pretty straightforward. Thankfully Will Smith's hair is kind of simple. Finally, we have things coming together and looking more realistic. We have a base layer and pencil shading down, and we also have blended it to create a smooth gradient, so that was the main priority in this section. In the next section we'll be looking at skin texture and details, working into what we have done today, and that part of the process usually takes the longest, but with that being said, I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it useful, and I'll see you in the next one.